Give us free. Give us free.
Your Honor, please instruct the defendant that he cannot disrupt these proceedings with such outbursts.
Give us free.
If we are to have any semblance of order in this court,
Give us free.
Peace, unity, and welcome my conscious and unconscious family and friends. This is the all-new Black Village Community Podcast, and I am truly your host of the show, JC, aka Afro Black, dropping nothing but the raw and uncut, without any fear, as I use my mic as a spear to chucka you with liberated truth. I am your host and your native soldier in the struggle. My purpose and mission for this show is first to enlighten, inform, and engage. And I want to engage with all who claim to know the truth. All truth seekers and my native family, I welcome you. This show is dedicated to all our indigenous native ancestors and to all those who've carried the mantle of truth, and to every person with the ability to throw off the chains of comfortable habit and unwarranted assumption and move in a new, liberated direction that is guided by truth and observational evidence, no matter where that direction may lead you. My main objective and purpose here is freedom, mind, soul, and spirit. That being said, welcome to the Black Village Community Podcast, and much love from our great universal goddess and mother of all, living here and above.
AC in the house.
Australia is a black country, so's America, so the superpower warneth of a black terror. It's not theft if it's yours and you take it back, just the correction of an inaccurate fact. So I'm not afraid at the thought of immigrants, more ashamed of my quarter of Englishness. The Scots and the Irish don't want to take this, being occupied by a state that is racist. Black history is a story of revolution and resistance. A salute to all our brothers, from now to Maurice Bishop.
Life is about questions. The more questions you ask, the more answers you're gonna get. The more answers you get, the more things that you're gonna know. Understand?
Right. Look, who said that E equals MC squared? Who's to say that the world ain't square? Who's to say that heaven's even there? Nobody knows, who cares? And why is poverty even an issue? Why don't the people who have got it wanna give you? Who knows if Jay-Z is a Mason? Who knows the real location of the goal that they're chasing? And when will mankind learn to be patient and stop the wrong moves that it's making? When? See, who said a doctor is a god? The NHS is a business, and who gets robbed? Who's really better off? The brother with a full-time job or the brother who shots? Who says what is true? How can any other man that breathes air be over you? Why does the media showboat the negative, and who believes the news that they're telling us? Question everything, the life that we live in is a lie, cause it's not just clouds in the sky and the illuminati Illuminati is not just an eye, and I know that Adam and Eve was a lie. So I question everything and never take another man's word or rely on what another man's heard. It's hearsay. I believe in myself, repeat that. I believe in myself, you see, cause
This is how we ride and roll. Soldier for life, for sure.
Hey, this is JC, aka Afro Black, and I am here with you for another delicious Black Sunday. You heard me here at the Black Village Community Podcast, and this is a beautiful day today. Here in Killer Cali, it's rainy and things, but it's still a beautiful day and a beautiful month, and you feel me? I got some beautiful things I want to share with the conscious community. You feel me? And today's podcast subject matter is in accordance with this beautiful month, which is Black History Month. I mean, you got those who celebrate it, those who don't celebrate it, those who acknowledge it, and many of those who don't acknowledge it. But you know what? I'm not going to celebrate Black History Month in the way I had normally in the past celebrated it. And the reason why is because of my newfound, it's not even new, but it's only new due to the fact of when you wake up and when you're conscious of the truth, of who I am. An indigenous black man, you feel me? With an indigenous black family, you feel me? And so on that note, I'm going to celebrate Black history the way it should be celebrated. I'm going to acknowledge Black history the way it should be acknowledged. By acknowledging my indigenous, ancestral, cultural, traditional knowledge, wisdom, insight, and heritage. You feel me, people? Today here at the Black Village Community Podcast, so join me. You can chime in at any time. Doesn't cost you a dime. Just a bit of your conscious time. You can chime in at 855-445-9340. You can also chime in at 857-232-0155. And don't forget the conference key to get through the conference door, which is 947595. So let me change my music to a little bit more laid back, something that we can reverberate to, something that I can share with, because today's podcast topic is Black History Month. But what about indigenous Black history? That's the topic. My peoples, that's what I'm going to reverberate on today. That's what I'm going to talk about today. Black History Month. But what about indigenous Black history? Is it real? Does it exist? Yes, it does exist. Yes, it is real. The original people of this continent, the original first people of Turtle Island were Aboriginal people. The natives were Aboriginal, indigenous to North America. So we're going to change up our music about right now. Give me something a little bit more laid back to, I'm gonna play what I played last week and the week before last. I'm going to give honor and tribute to the indigenous group, A Tribe Called Red. May these brothers continue the struggle. You feel me? That we, black and brown, are from the same family, the same root, the same indigenous soil. You feel me? Here in North America. So that's what I'm going to reverberate on today. So on that note, I got some audio casts I want to share, as I always do. I got some information I want to share. Also got a news update. I don't normally do news updates here on the Black Village, but you know what? I've always wanted to incorporate news updates, because when it comes to politics, when it comes to history, when it comes to government, they are all connected today in these modern times. You feel me? It's like a domino effect, one affect the other. And so on that note, I do have a news update I want to also verse on. And no, my queen is not here with me. She's not feeling well. Normally she does join me, but she's not feeling well. So, Afro Black is here with his conscious family on the mic. Just me and you feel me? So it's all gravy and potatoes. So on that note, what I want to talk about when it comes to a new, other than the news updates I want to share, and also I'm talking about for true indigenous people of North America, true Black history. See, all Black history is connected. Indigenous Native American Black history is Black history. You feel me? And so what I want to talk about, though, as far as the news update that I want to share with the conscious community, is the fact that a sister, an African sister from Africa, who is the leader of the AU. The AU is the African Union in South Africa. Her name is Dlamini Zuma. Okay, did Did you hear that? Her name is Dlamini Zuma. She's the AU leader, African Union leader in South Africa. And she slammed the U.S. for, Mr. Trump blocking all these, countries that he considered Muslim countries from coming into the U.S. So he's put a stop and a block on, tourism and people traveling from these certain countries. And so 3 of the countries out of the several countries that he's blocked, 3 of them are from Africa. And so she thought that wasn't cool. She thought that was not kosher. She thought that was not professional. That was not businesslike. That was not the relationship between South Africa and the U.S. Something is wrong. And the first thing she brought up was some history. I thought that it was important to share this history that she's talking about that I want to comment on. So the subject matter that I'm commenting on is not really her reference to the U.S. in the essence of her personal offense because of the blockage of tourism and visitors to the U.S. going back and forth to Africa and the U.S. What I want to focus on is a part of her statement that she made in reference to her defense. And I'm going to share that with the conscious community, and then I'm going to come back and comment on that. So hold a minute, check this out, we'll be back.
Okay, so this story comes to us from Antonia Bloomberg at Huffington Post. So, the head of the African Union called out President Donald Trump on Monday for the ultimate American hypocrisy. South African politician and chairperson of the AU Commission, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, addressed representatives of the Continental Union's 54 member states during a summit in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia on Monday. In her comments, Dlamini Zuma referenced Trump's recent executive order halting the U.S. refugee resettlement program and blocking entry of individuals from 7 Muslim-majority countries, 3 of which are AU members. The very country to which many of our people were taken as slaves during the transatlantic slave trade has now decided to ban refugees from some of our countries, Dlamini Zuma said, according to The Independent. Trump's order did not name the countries that would be affected, but reporters quickly confirmed that individuals from Iran, Iraq, Syria, Sudan, Libya, Yemen, and Somalia would be blocked from entering the country. The 3 African countries, Libya, Somalia, and Sudan, are all members of the African Union. What do we do about this? Indeed, this is one of the greatest challenges to our unity and solidarity, said Dlamini Zuma, who is stepping down from the AU this summer and is expected to run for South Africa's presidency. The U.S.'s role in the transatlantic slave trade constitutes one of the grossest abuses of human rights in the country's history. The Transatlantic Slave Trade Database estimates that more than 300,000 Africans were forcibly taken to the U.S. over the 360 years of the trade's operation.
That's what I wanted to focus on. You just heard a leader of Africa, a leader of the African Union, and a candidate for the South African presidency, Dlamini Zuma, quoted that a number of 300,000 Africans were taken during the transatlantic slave trade. And remember, people, the transatlantic slave trade started in 1626. But slavery of the indigenous native peoples go all the way to the 1500s. Starts all the way in 1492. Hits the shores of North America by the 1500s, by the early, from 1513, 1530, 1540, and so forth. And it continued even after the transatlantic slave trade, while you got ignorant house Negroes out there, and I say it that way because maybe I shouldn't come across so raw and uncut, especially on the beautiful Black History Month, but it really perturbs me, it really bothers me that you got educated Black people that are continuing the agenda of white supremacy to reclassify Black people as Africans, when in all reality, we are Native Americans, we are Black Native Americans, we are indigenous black Native Americans. You feel me, people? And on that note, I must play my favorite. What I must play? What am I going to play?
You go to a reservation, you see poverty, you see churches, and you see liquor stores. When you go to any hood, you see poverty, you see churches, and you see liquor stores. So what make you think you're not on a reservation? So all these achievements that we ascribe to African Americans, these achievements by Native Americans who had to take on an identity of being African American because they was hanging us. But you think they was hanging people because they was Africans.
I must play that. Whenever I'm talking about my cultural heritage, I'm going to play Brother from Turtle Gang. You feel me? I'm going to put...
African just want to go home. Nigga from here want to take his shit over. African just want to go home. Nigga from here want to take his shit over.
You heard the brother. It's like a thunderbolt to ignorant niggas. Because I'm going to tell you right now, white supremacists, they don't give a damn. White folks who are racist, they don't give a damn. They don't give a damn about what I'm talking about. They don't give a damn about what black people think and feel. As long as they can be comfortable where they at doing what they doing. You feel me? So on that note, it's still going to take us as a black people to wake the hell up. You feel me? So that was an update I wanted to play. That caught my attention that an African Union leader from South Africa would agree, would also validate from her perception, from her educated knowledge, would validate the fact that only, and according to the database, 326 Africans were brought to North America. Not the outrageous number that a whole bunch of house Negroes running around here quoting, 12 million were brought to America. When they really are manipulating, when they use the term Americas, because Americas during the 14th and the 15th century incorporated all of the small islands, all of the Caribbean islands, the Dominican Republic, the Haitian islands, the Virgin Islands, all that was considered and called America. But only less than half of 500 million. Only 300,000, my people, that's in the database. As far as the research that was done by 4 universities, only 300,326 Africans from 1626 to 1887 were brought to the shores and the soil of North America as slaves. And I'm going to tell you, people, like I've told you before, those Africans were brought here with the primary purpose to breed and make more slaves. So guess the gender. Guess the majority of the gender. More than 50%, more than 60%, more than 70%, and more than 80% of the gender cargo of African slaves on those cargo ships. The majority of them, 80%, if not more, were male. Were men, not women. They didn't have half women and half men. They didn't have 50% African men and 50% African women. No, they didn't have 60% African men and 40% African women. No, the number was much larger than that. More than half, more than 60, more than 70, more than 80% of the gender on them of those ships of African slaves that were brought here were men. You can't breed men with men. You have to breed men with women. So if more than 70, more than 80, more than 90% of your cargo is men, because you're using them as labor, forced labor, who you going to breed them with? Who you going to breed them with? And I've said it before, people. The first Africans that were brought here in 1626, only 17 of them. Only 17 of them came. And less than that, I believe, got off this damn ship. So we got to wake up, people, to realize who we are. We're not African Americans. We're not African Americans. We are Americans, though. We are Americans. And the people who got condemned for making statements like that, like Whoopi Goldberg, and, I slammed her because I was ignorant at one time, and, Raven Simone, and, who knows why they say what they said, but in reference to what they were saying, Whoopi, yes, she is an American. She is not an African. She is not an African American. She is an American. And by all means, due to the fact that her line, her lineage, her family lineage going all the way to slavery, embedded, interwoven into the roots of this country, she is a black Native American. She is an indigenous black Native, and she probably know her heritage. Who knows what Whoopi know? I don't know. You feel me? I don't know. You tell me. I just know what brothers like this is talking about.
African just want to go home. Nigga from here want to take his shit over. African just want to go home. Nigga from here want to take his shit over.
That's all I'm talking about. I do know that. I don't know what Whoopi knows about her heritage, but I do know she's right when Whoopi Goldberg made the statement that I am not an African American. She says, I am an American. And she is. Because the original indigenous people, before Europeans took that title to make it their own, before that title became a title for everybody who immigrates over here, that title was first given by the Spanish to the indigenous people of this country, which were the Amerindians, Native American, Black Indians, indigenous people of North America. That title was first given to the indigenous people of North America before Europeans took it to make it their own title. Before it became a title for the whole continent, it was first a title that was deemed to the people of North America, the indigenous people of North America, the Black, indigenous, original, aboriginal people of North America, my people. We have to wake up, you know. And to be real with you and talking about waking up, you know, I had a family member recently, you know, talk to me about what I do on the air and why I do it, and you know, and I was even told that I was giving out false information and, you know, question, you know, what I do. But this family member who spoke to me about what I do and questioned about what I do and why I do it, have never listened to me on the air, has never listened to any of my podcasts, have not listened to any of the information that I share. And so talking to this family member about what I do and why I do what I do made me think about a lot of things. It made me think about my past. You know, me, JC, aka Afro Black, here on the Black Village, thinking about before I even started the podcast, when I'm still on my journey, you know, in some of the early stages of my journey, coming, you know, growing up in the church and coming out of the church and becoming a Hebrew Israelite, and from being a Hebrew Israelite, becoming African conscious. And now I am indigenously conscious because I know my heritage. I know my grandmother's, you know, the culture and the heritage and the ethnicity of my great-grandmother, my great-great-grandmother, and my grandmother, which leads to my mother and my grandfather's side of the family, which is Cherokee and Choctaw. But prior to, you know, it made me think about all that. It made me think about, you know, when I was in the church, how I was constantly being told that I was a teacher. You feel me? That's what it made me think about. And so it leads me to what I do today. You know, I told my relative who I'm talking about, who was speaking to me about what I do, I was explaining to my relative, look, I just plant seeds. That's all I do. I plant seeds. I share information, you know, that I think is necessary and important for black people to be informed of and to know about and to question. You heard the beginning of the show, the beginning of the podcast. If anybody caught the beginning of the podcast, you heard the rapper. His name is Logic, who was the intro to today's show, and that intro, that rap song that you heard, the title of it is called Question. In the rap, he's talking about questioning everything. If you want to grow, if you want to learn, if you want to know, question everything. And that's what led me to where I am today, full circle, embracing my true identity as a true Amerindian American, Black Indigenous American, me, Native American. That's who I am, you feel me? And so, on that note, so the AU leader, she quoted Dlamini Zuma, African Union leader. Next year, she's running for president of South Africa. She mentioned that only 300,000 Africans was transported during the transatlantic slave trade, and she made the reference in disappointment and disagreement, and, you know, if you read her, you can tell she's angry at Mr. Donald Trump for making creating these blockages where people cannot come in to fro from the U.S. to Africa, from Africa to the U.S. tourism or visiting or anything like. He's blocked those. He's blocked those transportation. He made transportation rules where people cannot just go to 3 of the countries in Africa. So, on that note, any other news update I want to mention, which I found very interesting that I want to share with the conscious community, was some information that Mr. Trump is talking about changing the name or the title of Black History Month to African American History Month. I found that very interesting. So I was just wondering if there's any truth to this. I mean, is this man really talking about changing Black History Month? I mean, is it a farce? Is it real? Is this what's going on? I was just curious. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, I know. I said, if anybody read my my events page about the show, I said I wanted to expose what Black History Month is really about, and I meant that. Anybody who knows anything about Black history knows that Black History Month has been cemented over the years to perpetually get people to believe and to accept that Black people are African. Now, you got some that would argue that and say, "Oh, well, no, it's a celebration of African American." Again, that term African, bringing it together with American, saying that all Black people of North America are African, and that's a lie. Not everybody who have roots in North America, majority of Black people who have roots in North America are not African. Why I say the majority? Well, you got some Africans who've immigrated over here in the 60s, in the 50s, in the 40s, been here for many years. Some have been here, earlier than that, who are true Africans, who've come over here and made families, who've come over here and married white people, married other races, and even have married Black Americans. I'm using the term Black Americans in reference to people of color in North America. I know that Black is not an ethnicity, but you know what? There's a whole lot of Black people here in North America who are indigenous to North America, who are native to North America, who don't accept their indigenous connections to the Native American people of North America. So in that reference, I call Black people, or indigenous Black people who don't know they're indigenous, still Black people, in referencing all people of color in North America. So, those who are immigrated here from Africa, that title was beautiful for. But Africans who leave Africa, immigrate over here, become Americans, they are African Americans by all means. The president who used to be president, who was called the first Black president, Barack Obama, he is truly an African American due to the fact that his father being a Kenyan from Africa and his mother being a white woman, European, who is native to America. That makes him an African American. But people like me, and there are very many, the most Black folks who are indigenous to North America, who call themselves and say, "Oh, well, we're mixed." Yeah, we do have a lot of things where we've embraced a lot of other people and cultures and races and ethnicities into our family of the Black culture. But that does not take away from our roots. What are those roots? The roots, the fact that we are the children of the first people of Turtle Island, that we are the children and the descendants of the first people of Turtle Island, indigenous Aboriginal North Americans. That history has been hidden, that history has been buried, that history has been ignored, and is still being ignored by the people and the children that should be acknowledging the truth of who they are. Us. My family, my sisters and brothers, who are saying that culture don't matter. I got straight family members that'll tell you in a minute, well, culture, that don't matter. I mean, that's the true vocals of ignorance to even say something that culture does not matter. Then what matters? What I'm hearing from a lot of Black people, spirit. Well, I want you to know that culture, identity, traditions, heritage, and spirituality are all connected. But Black people have been taught the reverse. And they're truly operating in it. But it's really sad when white people know more about us than we know about ourselves. Now, I told you this was going to be a Black History Month. It was, I was going to talk, this is the part that I'm exposing how Black history is a cover-up to reclassify us. And when you accept that reclassification and the celebration of that reclassification, you make yourself stupefied and blind to who you really are. And knowing who you are and who you're connected to as a people and as a culture and as a heritage is important to the strength of a people. My people. But it's really sad when the very people who put us in the mixed up condition that my people, my indigenous black people, my indigenous brown people are in today. It's really sad when the enemy knows more about you than you know about yourselves. That only gives him the enemy the advantage. What am I talking about? Let me let you hear what I'm talking about. You've heard me play this before. I'm going to play it again on Black History Month. Check it out.
Filters, it was all over the country that I had advocated violence against immigrants. Nothing is farther from the truth.
Wait a minute. Let me play that again. Here we go.
When I was reading to prepare for this interview, I was quite surprised to see you use the word Aborigines talking about African Americans.
I've dealt with that issue. I've already talked publicly about that.
And my purpose here today is to say that I'm very sorry, and I apologize to anyone whose feelings were hurt by my comment.
I've made very, very clear I don't know where that comment comes from.
From your subconscious.
Well, I guess. I mean, it's not even a normal thing anyone would say, even if you meant something in a negative fashion. I don't know if you would pull that out. But for me personally, you can't just close down camp and stop trying to do the things that you think are right just because somebody, you may give them an unfortunate bit of ammunition. You still got to continue to fight on and do what's best for the state in the long run. And frankly, it's going to give me the opportunity to talk about things that I may never been able to talk about before.
You mean the bill?
Well, the bill, or talk about race relations issues, things like that. I mean, I have a freedom that a lot of people don't have because of that.
Because you used the word Aborigine.
Because I've been through the fire, and I can.
Yeah, you heard it. He called black folks. That's a senator of Alabama who called black Americans Aborigines. Yes, he did.
When I was reading to prepare for this interview, I was quite surprised to see you use the word Aborigines talking about African Americans.
And it got him in trouble. It got him in trouble for saying that. He got in trouble for saying that. That senator of Alabama by the name of Senator Bison. His name is Senator Bison. He got in trouble for that to the degree that he apologized to white folks. Again, that white man got on TV and apologized. He didn't apologize for what he said. Don't get it twisted. He apologized to white people, and look what he said, the way he said it. If I offended you, I apologize if I offended you. That was his statement. But when the interviewer asked him, do you apologize for your statement? He didn't answer that because he's not apologetic for a statement that he know is true.
I can talk to people. I can relate. It's going to give me the opportunity, talk about things that I may never been able to talk about.
Let me go back.
You mean the bill?
Well, the bill, or talk about race relations issues, things like that. I mean, I have a freedom that a lot of people don't have because of that.
Because you used the word Aborigine.
Because I've been through the fire, and I can.
Yeah, he can. He has a position where he can say things that a lot of people can't say. Yeah, he called black folks Aborigines. People, listen. Things are not said in the public by senators and politicians for no reason at all. It only goes over our head because we're too ignorant to pay attention. You feel me? So. That's some of the update I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to talk about that. And like I say, that really caught my attention. That African sister who's she's the leader of the African Union in South Africa, who made the statement to the press that only 300,000 Africans was taken during the transatlantic slave trade. And so I thought that was very important to point out. And so, but also what I really, really, really want to share today, this Black History Month, what I wanted to play is, as far as an audio cast, is basically a history lesson. I thought it was important for us to remember, like I said, indigenous history is black history. It's just not taught as it should be. It should be taught as black history, but it's not. And so I thought it was really, really important for me to share some black history with the conscious community. I thought it was important, maybe something that we're not privy to, we don't know about. Every time I do research on indigenous history, indigenous culture and tradition, I learn something new. So I thought, I'm not sure what my listeners, my conscious listeners, know and what you guys have researched. So I thought it was important to maybe take an ABCD lesson on indigenous history here in North America. And so I got an audio cast I want to play by a group called, the group is called Crash History. It's called Crash History. And so I want to play this. And so it's by Crash Course History. That's what it's called, Crash Course History. And so this is titled Native Americans and Spaniards before the European colonization. What was our ancestors living like, and what caused them to change? So this is a little bit. This is about 8 minutes long. So just kick back and relax and learn a little bit of our indigenous Native American heritage. And I'm going to do this also next week. So since this is Black History Month, I'm going to take about 3 or 4 podcasts and share some real true indigenous history. And so I'm going to share that with the conscious community. I'm going to do that right now. So kick back, relax. It's going to take about a little less than 10 minutes. This little segment that I'm going to play right now. And so enjoy yourself on this beautiful indigenous Black History Month. Peace and unity. Peep, check this out.
Hi, I'm John Green, and this is Crash Course U.S. History. Now, Stan, that's not going to work, actually. I mean, we're talking about the 16th century today when this was neither united nor states. By the way, this globe reflects the fact that I believe that Alaskan statehood is illegitimate. In fact, we're going to call this whole show U.S. History, but inevitably it's going to involve other parts of the world, and also, not to brag, a small part of the moon. Sorry, we can be a little bit self-aggrandizing sometimes here in America. So to begin U.S. history, we're not going to talk about the United States or this guy. We're going to talk about the people who lived here before any Europeans showed up. North America was home to a great variety of people, so it's difficult to generalize, but here's what we can say. 1, when the Europeans arrived, there were no classical-style civilizations with monumental architecture and empires like the Aztec or the Incas. And 2, native North Americans had no metalwork, no gunpowder, no wheels, no written languages, and no domesticated animals. However, they did have farming, complex social and political structures, and widespread trade networks.
Mr. Green! So they were pretty backwards, huh? Well, I mean, or at least primitive.
Primitive is a funny word to me from the past because it implies a romanticization, these simple people who never used more than they needed and had no use for guns, and it also implies an infantilization. It's like you believe that just because you have a beeper and they didn't, they were somehow less evolved humans. But you can't see the human story as one that goes from primitive to civilized. That's not just Eurocentric, that's contemporary-centric. The idea that we're moving forward as a species implies a linear progression that just does not reflect the reality of life on this planet. So there had been civilizations in North America, but they peaked before the Europeans arrived. The Zuni and Hopi civilization, round about here, peaked about 1200 CE. They had large multiple family dwellings in canyons, which they probably left because of drought. Crash Course world history fans will remember that environmental degradation often causes the decline of civilizations. I'm looking at you, Indus Valley, and also you, entire future Earth. But complex civilizations weren't the rule in North America, and now we're about to begin generalizing, a bad habit historians have, partly because there's a limited historical record, but also because Eurocentric historians have a bad habit of primitivizing and simplifying others. So I want to underscore that there was huge diversity in the pre-Columbus American experience, and that talking about someone who lived here in 1000 BCE and talking about someone who lived here 2,000 years later is just inherently problematic. That said, let's go to the thought bubble. Most native groups in most places organized as tribes, and their lives were dominated by the natural resources resources available where they lived. So West Coast Indians primarily lived by fishing, gathering, and hunting sea mammals. Great Plains Indians were often buffalo hunters. These tribal bands often united into loose confederacies or leagues, the best known of which was probably the Iroquois Confederacy, also called the Great League of Peace. This was kind of like an upstate New York version of NATO, but without nuclear weapons or the incessant international meddling or Latvians. Okay, it was nothing like NATO, actually. Religion usually involved a vibrant spiritual world with ceremonies geared toward the tribe's lifestyle. Hunting tribes focused on animals, agricultural tribes on good harvests, and most Indian groups believed in a single creator god who stood above all the other deities, but they weren't monotheistic in the way that Christians who came to the New World were. American Indians also saw property very differently from Europeans. To First Peoples, land was a common resource that village leaders could assign families to use, but not to own, and most land was seen as common to everyone. As Black Hawk, a leader of the Sauk tribe, said, "The Great Spirit gave it to his children to live upon and cultivate as far as necessary for their subsistence. And so long as they occupy and cultivate it, they have a right to the soil." Thanks, Thought Bubble. So many of us tend to romanticize American Indians as being immune from greed and class, but in fact there were class distinctions in Indian tribes. Rulers tended to come from the same families, for instance. That said, wealth was much more evenly distributed than it was in Europe. And while most tribal leaders were men, many tribes were matrilineal, meaning that children became members of their mother's family. Also, women were often important religious leaders. Women also often owned dwellings and tools, although not land, because again, that idea did not exist. Also, in many tribes, women engaging in premarital scootily pooping wasn't taboo. In general, they were just much less obsessed with female chastity than Europeans were. I mean, I will remind you, the first English settlement in America was called Virginia. The idea that Native Americans were noble savages, somehow purer than Europeans and untouched by their vices, is not a new one. Like some of the earliest Europeans saw the Indians as paragons of physical beauty and innocent of Europeans' worst characteristics. But for most Europeans, there was little noble about what they saw as pure Indian savagery. I mean, Indians didn't have writing, they suffered from the terrible character flaw of being able to have sex without feeling ashamed, and most importantly, they weren't Christians. The Spanish were the first Europeans to explore this part of the world. Juan Ponce de Leon arrived in what is now Florida in 1513 looking for gold and the fabled Fountain of Youth. In 1521, he encountered a Calusa brave's poison-tipped arrow and died before discovering that the Fountain of Youth is, of course, delicious Diet Dr. Pepper. Oh, I can taste all 23 flavors. There were many more Spanish explorers in the first half of the 16th century, including one Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca, who wandered through the American Southwest looking for gold, which I mention entirely because I think that guy's last name means cowhead. Of course, none of these people found any gold, but they did make later European colonization easier by bringing over the microbes that wiped out most native populations. So the Spanish wanted to colonize Florida to set up military bases to thwart the pirates who preyed on silver-laden Spanish galleons coming out of Mexico. But Spanish missionaries also came over hoping to convert local native populations. This, of course, worked out magnificently. Just kidding, it went terribly. And many of the missions were destroyed by an uprising of Gual Indians in 1597. And I will remind you, mispronouncing things is my thing. In general, colonizing Florida sucked because it was hot and mosquito-y. Spain was much more successful at colonizing the American Southwest. Time for the new Crash Course feature, the mystery document? How mysterious. The rules here are simple. I read and attempt to identify the mystery document. If I am right, I do not get shocked by this shock pen, and if I am wrong, I do. Okay, what do we have here? The Indians were totally deprived of their freedom and were put in the harshest, fiercest, most horrible servitude and captivity, which no one who has not seen it can understand. Even beasts enjoy more freedom when they are allowed to graze in the fields, but our Spaniards gave no such opportunity to Indians and truly considered them perpetual slaves. I sometimes came upon dead bodies on my way, and upon others who were grasping and moaning in their death agony, repeating, "Hungry, hungry." And this was the freedom, the good treatment, and the Christianity the Indians received. Okay, so the mystery document is always a primary source, and since the writer refers to our Spaniards, I'm going to guess that he or she, probably he, is European, and a Spaniard sympathetic to the Indians, which narrows the list of suspects considerably. So it probably wasn't De Sepulveda, for instance, who argued that the Indians might not even be human. Okay, Stan, I'm actually pretty confident here. I believe it is from a short account of the destruction of the Indies by Bartolome de las Casas. Oh, dang it! Oh, Stan just told me I have the author right, but the book wrong. It's a history of the Indies. Oh, I hate shocks, both literal and metaphorical. So we focused a lot on the brutality of the Spanish toward the Indians, but at least one Spaniard, de las Casas, recognized that his countrymen were terrible. This realization is a good thing, obviously, but it leads us to one of the big problems when it comes to studying this time and place. The Black Legend is the tale that the Spanish unleashed unspeakable cruelty on the Indians. Now, that tale is true, but that idea was used by later settlers, especially the English, to justify their own settlements. Like, part of the reason they needed to expand their empire was to save the Indians from the awful Spanish. But were the English so much better? Yeah, probably not. As we mentioned at the beginning of today's episode, American Indians didn't have writing, so we don't have records of their perspective. Now, some Europeans, like de las Casas, were critical of the Spaniards, but most considered the Indians heathens and implied, or even outright said, that they deserved whatever horrible things befell them. So at the beginning of our series, I want to point out something that we need to remember throughout. One of the great things about American history is that we have a lot of written sources. This is the advantage of the U.S. coming onto the scene so late in the game, historically speaking. But every story we hear comes from a certain point of view, and we always need to remember who is speaking, why they are speaking, and especially which voices go unheard and why.
There you go. That was Crash Course History. You know, I chose that. I want you to know now, I didn't agree with everything he said, but as I go, you know, the weeks in this month, in the next 2 to 3 weeks in this month, and I share Indigenous history, I would open up some things based on what he talked about, falsities and true things. So he was true about the fact that our ancestors believed in one creator God, and that God was a goddess, the Great Spirit Mother. I'm pretty sure you guys have been told that they call the Great Creator Mother a him or a he or their father, but that's not what the indigenous Aboriginal people believe. Our indigenous North America Amerindian ancestors worshipped, acknowledged a Great Creator Mother, the Great Spirit Mother. Okay? And you got some people that would debate that with me, and I invite them to come on to the podcast. If you want to debate that with me, make sure you got your history tightened up, because I will have mine tightened up and definitely share with you what I know. And if I'm wrong, I stand corrected. But that's what I've learned, and that's what I've researched. And some might say that, well, that was only the Matrino tribes. I want you to know our original ancestors. Matter of fact, going all the way to one of the greatest, because he said that there was no writing. And that's not true as well. You did have tribes that had systems of writing and language. All of them had a language, and there were many languages here in North America. Many, more than what the white man could handle. You know, let's look at it this way. There was over, and I've said it before, more than 500 Native American tribes. That's not, more than 500 Native American nations. Let me correct that. That's not tribes. Nations. There were more than 500 Native American nations on Turtle Island, which is now called the United States of America. And a nation could have many tribes in it. You feel me? The Cherokee Nation was one of the largest nations that had many tribes and confederacies within that nation. You know, the Yamasee, the Cherokee, the Choctaw, the Chickasaw, the Cree, they were a part of the Cherokee Nation. So we have to understand the complexity of this thing here, and we have to also comprehend the fact that we have to research truth for ourselves. We have to seek it out for ourselves. So why I played that, though, despite the discrepancies I had with it, because he had a lot. He shared a lot of things that was true. You had those Indian tribes that farmed and fished, and you had those Native American tribes that were the Plains tribes that hunted and ate beef. You had tribes that didn't eat beef. Many tribes, many Native American tribes, indigenous Aboriginal tribes, did not customarily eat beef. Matter of fact, you know, those there was also vegetarians, Native Americans who didn't eat meat whatsoever. They were vegans, straight vegans. And so we have to understand the complexity of our people. You feel me? And so that's the whole point. For me to play that is to encourage my people. I played that so to encourage my people to basically energize my people, or if not, give you an itch in the back of your mind to make you want to go out, or make you, want to go seek out some information on yourself, so we can study this thing and learn about our people here, the indigenous aboriginal people of North America. You feel me? And that's what I'm all about here at the Black Village. You can always join me. It doesn't cost you a dime, just a bit of your conscious time. You can chime in at 855-445-9340. You can also chime in and join me, ask me a question, share some information with me, or just join me on the show and just listen in. You can chime in also at 857-232-0155, and the conference key is 947595. This is JC, aka Afro Black, here with you at the Black Village Community Podcast. And so, yes, also in that little segment I played with you, he mentioned the Great Law of Peace, which was an agreement and a treaty and an oral tradition and a practice that all the nations knew of. It's as it spread across Turtle Island, and I'm going to talk about the history of the Great Law of Peace, which is the Constitution is fashioned after, and was the floor mat and the floor plans and the foundation for the Constitution, our indigenous ancestral Great Law of Peace. I'm going to do a podcast on that. So he mentioned that. So there was some good information in there, even him mentioning about the Black legend. I'm going to talk about that as well in another podcast, which talks about that's some history between the war our ancestors here on Turtle Island with the Spaniards when they were coming to colonize North America in the early 1500s. So on that note, there you go. So I wanted to play that. I thought it was important to share that little crash course of history. But as I say, Native American history is Black history. And that's something that Black folks need to wake up to. We must wake up and realize that Black history is Native American history. Of course, is African history a part of it? Yes, of course. African history is a part of the fabric of Black history. Why? Because Africans were brought to North America as slaves. So I'm not rebutting the African contribution to Black history. What I'm rebutting, and I want those who don't understand where I'm coming from to understand what I'm rebutting is the fact that you got most people who don't even mention any Native American achievements, any Native American history, any Native American culture, or Native American contributions to the struggle. And the struggle here in North America, when the struggle started here, when I say the struggle, I'm talking about the struggle for survival, for existence, for economic opportunity, for civil rights, for when that struggle started here in North America, due to European colonization, due to creating a government and a society, due to where we are today, that struggle here in North America began with indigenous North Americans, indigenous Indians, indigenous Aborigine, indigenous Black Americans. I'm trying to put it in every way possible, you feel me, to let you guys comprehend the fact of where my mindset is at, that Black people have an indigenous connection to this country. So when you talk about the Black Panther Party, when you talk about Martin Luther King, when you talk about Malcolm X, them brothers had indigenous connections here in North America first, before they have any roots of connections in Africa. And why do I say that? Because they were born here, because their ancestral connection is here. See, even though Native Americans were taken out of North America and enslaved in Europe and enslaved in many other countries, but at the same time, Africans were brought here. They were brought here to our women. They were brought here as slaves to women who were already enslaved on plantations. And they had children and created a progeny here in North America, making us native and indigenous to North America through our mothers. So we have to wake up to that, people. We have to wake up to that truth. And a lot of us ignore that. You feel me? So on that note, I got a little bit more time I can spare. And so what I wanted to also, what I wanted to share with the conscious community when it comes to the fact of Mr. Trump, going back to that news update, making changes to the name Black History and changing it to African American History Month. Matter of fact, let me pull that up right here. I actually wanted to read that. I should already had that up, But I know what I do have up sitting here on my screen as I'm talking to my conscious community that I want to share that I find quite odd. That's sitting here that I find quite. I'm looking at some history, and I've read this history before about Hernando de Soto, Francisco Coronado, Philippine del Escalante, Gaspar Perez del Villagara. These were Spanish people who came here and colonized here before Africans were ever brought here and enslaved the indigenous population. So, and they started plantations here. Like I've said it before in a podcast, that when Europeans came over, when the English came over here, mind you, when I say Europeans, you got to be specific about which Europeans, because many Europeans came over here and colonized North America, from the Spanish to the German to the Dutch to the Swedes. They all took a piece, to the French. You feel me? So when we talk about those who are ruling here today, and they got deep history over here of colonization, English, who didn't come here and colonize and start taking land until around 1580, 85, 1586, and 1587. Around there, I have to go brush up on my dating sometime. I forget things, but I believe it was between 1586 and 1587. And most of the plantations that are in the history books are plantations that were already here before English Europeans came, because these plantations were built by Native Americans and controlled by the Spanish. So a lot of the Spanish handed over their plantation colonies to the English during this exchange that they did. And that's another podcast for another session, and I've did it in the past, that there was a business deal between the Spanish and the English when the English came in and took most of the Spanish colonies. And those colonies were inhabited by slave labor of the indigenous population. So, as I said before, when Africans got here, Africans came to plantations that were already colonized by slave labor of the indigenous populace. You feel me? And so, this article that I'm looking at right now, where I just, it's called Reading Guide into the Interior of the Spanish. And you can go check that out at National Humanity. Make sure I got that right. National Humanity Entities Center.org. You can go check that out. Humanities Center.org. You can go check that out on that page yourself. You feel me? So you can go learn some real stuff. You feel me? And share that with your family on Black History Month. So, let me see what else I got here. Oh yeah, this thing I want to share about I want to read about Mr. Trump. I found this very interesting. This is a news update. I know I might I'm jumping around right here, but this caught my interest, and I thought I wanted to share this with the conscious community. Oh wow, the page is not found now. The page is gone. Okay, my bad. Okay. I got a page missing that I was wanting to read to you guys, and all of a sudden the page is gone. It's not even there. But, here we go. It's called To Commemorate Black History Month, Trump Administration Decrees That White Supremacists Can't Be Terrorists. It says during this 2016 presidential campaign, Donald Trump presided to take care of African American people. Given Trump's embrace of overtly or implicitly racist laws and law and order policies, his history of other people, of the people of, his history, let me see, my eyes just jumped. His history of racial discrimination against African Americans and other people of color at his properties and his vigilant threats to commit a public lynching against Central Park 5, there was always an element of menace to that declaration. The Trump administration wants to overvamp and rename a U.S. government program designed to counter all violent ideologies so that it focuses solely on Islamic extremism. 5 people briefed on the matter told Reuters that the program of countering the violent extremist, or CVE, would be changed to countering Islamic extremism or countering racial Islamic extremism, the source said, and would no longer target groups such as white supremacists who have also carried out bombings and shootings in the United States. I'm like, wow. So I found that interesting. So I guess that was an update I wanted to share with you guys. I really found that strangely interesting, because any group, doesn't matter black, brown, or yellow, that carries out bombings and threats against U.S. citizens should be considered a terrorist group. But he said he wants to focus on certain groups. He wants to be more specific of what I guess his interest is based on. So, there you go right there, my people. So on that note, I got, my time is short. That was a piece that I didn't squeeze in earlier with with my informational news update that I thought was important to share. Other than the African Union leader in South Africa, who also made statements and caught my interest with the 300,000 database of Africans being brought to North America during the transatlantic slave trade, which also piqued my interest, that I thought I wanted to share with the conscious community today here on I'm calling it Black Indigenous History Month. So I think it's important for us to realize that what they've told us, where Black history starts and began, that's not true. I mentioned on my events page that I was going to talk about Brother Frederick Douglass. And because, out of anybody that is acknowledged in the school system from the past, when it comes to slavery and when it comes to civil rights, in this country, Frederick Douglass is one of the ones I respect and honor. And I have an even higher respect and honor for Frederick Douglass today, due to the fact of finding out that he knew, because he's indigenous to this country. He knew that black people were indigenous, and it's just as far as back as the early to the mid to the late 1800s. We're just talking about, where you see information from Frederick Douglass, and even information from those who were in opposition of Frederick Douglass, like Martin Delany and Alexander Cromwell, those who are the founders of Pan-Africanism. You see, when you read Martin Delany's pamphlet on the evolution and economics of black people in America, when you read his pamphlet, go look it up, go check it out. Martin Delany, go check him out. Martin Delany. I think his whole name was Martin Robeson Delany. From back in the early 1800s, he was an abolitionist. He fought in the Civil War. He worked for Frederick Douglass' first newspaper called the North Star. But this man also joined a group along with 2 others from Wilmot Biden and Alexander Cromwell, which were also black men of the West Indies. Even though Martin Delany is from North America, he joined them in a scheme of sending black people from North America back to Africa. But Frederick Douglass knew this was wrong, because he knew that black people in America are not African. So he was not. So he documented that information in his speech of 1894, which is the scheme, the Back to Africa scheme. So I encourage my people to do your own research. Do your own research on your history. Do your own research on history in general. Whatever the history that you're doing, whatever history you are focusing on, look for the truth. Don't look for what you want. Look for the truth. So that's what I do. You feel me? And so when it comes to history here in America, which, history is a whole lot of hidden history in America. Be open. Be open to truth. You feel me? So truth is like a treasure. Don't create your truth. Look for the truth. So on that note, I got to go. My time is short. I put in my time and I got to go. But I will be back. I will be black, dropping nothing but the raw and uncut here on the Black Village Community Podcast. You can join me every Sunday live here on Spreaker. You can join me every Sunday here on Spreaker.com, the Black Village Community Podcast. And from 3 to 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, West Coast time, you feel me? And so it doesn't cost you a dime. You can always chime in. As always, like I said earlier, 855-445-9340, 857-232-0155, and the conference key to get through the conference door to sit down here at the conscious table of truth with JC, aka Afro Black, which is me, your storm of consciousness, 947595. So please join me next week. I will be back here, and I will be continuing Black History Month with Black Indigenous history. And so I'll be going a little bit deeper. I didn't go that deep today because I thought it was important to share some information that I thought was, some political information, might I say, some newsworthy information that I thought was important to share. You feel me? And so I will be back, and I will be black. And so I gotta go. I gotta do as I always do. You feel me? And I'm gonna end it with A Tribe Called Red. So I'm going out with that there. So I will be back. Everybody join me here. Join me back. I will be back. I gotta go. So as always, I'm gonna end it on this note. I like chicken. So love, peace, and chicken grease. And may the great mother bring us together in the love of her wings and her peace. I'm out. I gotta go. I'm out. Peace, love, and unity. I'm gone.
We are the Halusa Nation. Our DNA is of earth and sky. Confronted by the Alai Nation, Alien Nation, the subjects and the citizens see the material religions through trauma and numb. Nothing is related. All the things of the earth and in the sky have energy to be exploited. Even themselves, mining their spirits into souls sold. Into nothing is sacred, not even their self. The Alai Nation, Alien Nation.
Emergency on planet Earth. The currency is murder, you a man of worth. They say the day is coming, drumming that you can't reverse. Watch the banner burn before the cannon burst. Don't chase an illusion, the nation halusa. Hallelujah, taste of the future, the people, the shower, the pistol, the coward, the tracing the suture. Lonely martyrs, magic carpets, dirty blankets, Coca-Cola, soul controller, holy waters. Middle East mode, sand glorious. Cheat code in Babylonian, the Orient. My superhero got the people power. Yasin and Yasin, you should heed the hour.
With you and living kings, I mean it, I mean it. Yasin and Yasin in the R.E.B. I mean it. Original nation with one solid, I mean it. Straight solid with.